Morning. So I made a comment in the adult class out here in the auditorium, and I need to apologize because I lied. I said the sermon today will talk a little bit about invoking the name of Jesus, and I realized as I finished class and started putting my mind into this sermon, that's next week's sermon. So it's getting bad, folks. I used to say, look, don't ask me 10 minutes after I preach the sermon what I preached on because I'll have already forgotten it. Now I'm forgetting it before I preach it. So it's really a struggle up here. So no, instead, we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 8, and we'll travel to other parts of the text as well, but we're going to be looking at the demon-possessed man possessed by the legion of demons. Steve Akers wrote me this week and he said, hey, what are you preaching on? Because I've got songs. And I get no greater enjoyment than trying to give song leaders a really difficult thing to try and write songs and pick songs for. And so I just wrote him back and I said, so I want your most swine-influenced songs. And you failed. Those were not pig songs at all. They were lovely and wonderful and praise to God, but they didn't match the topic. So in Luke chapter 8, Jesus crosses over to the land of the Gerasenes, and he is over there in a Gentile territory. And as he's there, there is a man that is possessed by a multiplicity of demons. And so in verse 27, it says, when he came out on the land, he was met by a man from the city who was possessed with demons, and who had not put on any clothing for a long time, and was not living in a house, but in the tombs. And seeing Jesus, he cried out and fell before him, and said in a loud voice, what business do we have with each other, Jesus, Son of High God? I beg you, do not torment me. For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man, for it had seized him many times. And he was bound with chains and shackles and kept under guard, and yet he would break his bonds and be driven by the demon into the desert. And Jesus asked him, what is your name? And he said, Legion, for many demons had entered him, and they were imploring him not to command them to go away into the abyss. And now there was a herd of many swine feeding there on the mountain, and the demons implored him to permit them to enter the swine, and he gave them permission. And the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. And when the herdsmen saw what had happened, they ran away and reported it in the city and out in the country. And the people went out to see what had happened. And they came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting down at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they became frightened. This account is reiterated also in Matthew's account. And this demon-possessed man has a really very difficult and horrible circumstance. I mean, as you read through it and you try and, in your mind's eye, imagine this man's life that is so completely out of control. He is possessed and overpowered by these demons, and they have taken over his life and ravaged his existence, while other people of his age in life are working and having families and raising children and beginning their life and doing all sorts of wonderful things and pursuing their dreams. This man is out amongst tombs without any clothing, without any home. People are terrified of him. And you can only imagine, because that's all we're left to do is to try and fill in the gaps and imagine what it would be like to be in your own mind, but to not be in your right mind. To be in a situation where you are aware, but you are not in control. And how terrifying that must be, to have your body doing things that you do not want it to do, and to be ashamed as people see you in circumstances you would never choose for yourself, and terrified as your body goes through things and your mind screams no, 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 and the demons continue to possess you. Demon possession was a horrible and terrible thing, an afflicting ailment that existed during the times of Jesus. But one of the things that we should know and pay attention to is the fact that demon possession was a physical manifestation of an spiritual battle that continues today. As much as demons possessed people back then, demons do still exist. Their vile tendencies, their rebellious ways, their desire to hurt and afflict and damage mankind has not changed. The opportunities to physically possess seem to have diminished, or in my view, I think the text points to it being entirely gone now. But they will still do what they can where they can. In Ephesians chapter 6, we're told, put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. By the way, when you start preaching, Ephesians 6 is like one of the first things they're going to give you a sermon to write on, because it's real easy. It's like, here's the armor. You put on the helmet, and there's breastplate, and then you've got prayer, and you handle all these different pieces. And so every young preacher preaches on the whole armor of God, and yet I think a lot of times we miss this terrifying portion of it. Because while we're putting up pictures of Roman armor, we forget that in verse 11 through 13 it says, you're to stand against the schemes of the devil. Because we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. Paul, as he wrote to the church at Ephesus, made it clear that there is a cosmic, heavenly, spiritual, angelic, demonic warfare ongoing. It is a constant thing. I don't know about you, but sometimes I just sit and I'll think about what Hebrews says, that the idea that angels are ministering spirits. It's a beautiful thought, isn't it? That God has made these angelic beings with so much power. I mean, you read in the Old Testament of the things that angels could do. Angels wipe out entire armies in the Old Testament. And yet, we're told in the book of Hebrews that they are ministering spirits sent on behalf of us, that we might benefit from the good work that they do. And so sometimes I think, especially after there's been some series of events in my life that I thought was going to go bad, and then it looked like it'd get worse, and then all at the end, God somehow wrapped it all together, and it turned out well. And I sit and I think, what were the angels in that? Were there angels making sure that traffic light turned green or red at just the right moment? Are there angels nudging world events one way or another, small little things in answer to my prayers? My problem is I don't know how they minister. I don't know all of the things that they do. We get little hints within the text. Even in dealing with things like hospitality, we're told that you be hospitable because you might entertain angels. And that might just be talking about in the Old Testament, where they certainly did at times show hospitality and end up entertaining angels. It might, in fact, be referring to today too. The same things could be going on. I don't know exactly how it works. We wrap the whole thing under this title of providence. Providence, where God provides. I don't know how, but we prayed and God promised, and then it all worked out. And I don't know the things happening in the cosmic spiritual realm. I don't know all the details of the battle that was going on, but I know that angels are sent to minister on behalf of us. And so sometimes I like to sit and think about that. And how comforting that is to know that there are angels that watch over my children. And there are angels that watch over the church. There are angels that watch over knuckleheads like me. To know that is such a beautiful thing, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're not talking about angels, we're talking about demons. 1 Corinthians 10 talks about those who participate in false religion and false teaching are participants with demons. 1 Timothy chapter 4 talks about the teachings of demons. And Revelation chapter 9 talks about those who worship idols are in fact worshiping demons. I like to think about angels. Angels guiding little unseen details of my life and of the lives of those I love and those I pray for, sometimes even my enemies. I like to think about that. What I don't like to think about is that it seems demons are doing the exact same thing, but in reverse. That they too are absolutely manipulating events in whatever ways they can. How does false teaching exist? If Jesus is the way and the truth and the life, which I very much believe him to be, why does not everybody just accept truth? Why? If God made the garden so good, did we not just stay there? Why is it that evil exists at all when we all know that evil goes to only dark places? And the answer is there are demonic forces at work. There is evil that happens. There are spiritual forces of wickedness as much as there are spiritual forces of righteousness. And I don't know exactly how demons work in the day-to-day any more than I could tell you all the ways that angels work in the day-to-day. But me not knowing how it works doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I also can't tell you all the details about quantum physics. But that doesn't make quantum physics fake. I can't tell you how rocket propulsion happens. I couldn't tell you how they send rockets up to space and then land them back on the ground. I know there's fire involved somewhere, and then you have to land the thing. I understand enough that it happens, but I couldn't tell you how it happens. But that doesn't mean it doesn't because I don't understand it. One glimpse we get of what demons are about is in demon possession. What happens when demons are allowed to really just run rampant in a man's life? When just a legion of them just come on in and take over. And the picture is horrific. It's terrifying and shameful and degrading. It brings the man to a point in life where he is at a low that none of us could possibly even begin to imagine. Which brings me to my second point. The funny thing that demon possession shows us is that Satan does in fact have power and he does offer it. But at an absolutely awful cost. This man was very powerful. He could break shackles and chains. They would chain him up. Have you ever gone to Lowe's and you had to buy a length of chain? You know that, as you buy chain, there's rows of them of different thicknesses. And you start out with like the little stuff. And then you work your way up until you've got like the really thick links of chain. And in order to cut that, you have to get somebody to come out because they're going to have to use an angle grinder or something. I don't think it was the thin chain they were using on this guy. And so they have him locked down, chained in, shackled, and yet he could break free of it. No one could guard him. And I imagine over in this region of the other side of the Sea of Galilee, they had people just like we have people that were jacked. It's not just like little people. They would have big people too. They'd have strong people. There's like that neighbor there who's always lifting weights. And they go, here, you come over, you watch him. I ain't watching him. No one could guard him. The most well-trained Roman legionnaires could not guard him. The most powerful, the strongest, the boldest, the most terrifying amongst men could not stop him. This man was very powerful. He could not be controlled. He is a force, so much so that everybody in the region knows of him. Right? Because when he's healed, they go out into the city and they go out into the country and they tell everybody, do you know that man, what happened? The demons were cast out. A man named Jesus did it. And everybody knew this guy. He had a reputation. So yeah, he was powerful. But look at the cost. The cost of that power was isolation from everyone. He could not be controlled, but he was also out of control. He was degraded, without clothing. He was unstable, without a home. No place to lay his head and feel comfortable. No peace, no joy. And I will tell you, that is exactly what demons offer today too. It is exactly what Satan offers us today too. He offers you power, but at a horrible, horrible cost. In Luke chapter 4, Jesus, when he was tempted by the devil, he's taken after 40 days, and there are 3 temptations. And in Luke chapter 4, just back up a couple of chapters in the book of Luke, in Luke chapter 4, it says, the devil took him up and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. This is a detail about the temptation of Jesus that Luke alone adds. If you read Matthew's account, you would get this image that Jesus goes up on a high mountain and the devil shows him all the kingdoms of the earth at that time. As if you could be in charge of Rome, and you could also be in charge of the barbarians, and you could be in charge of all of these different regions of the world. But instead, Luke tells us the devil took him up and showed him all the kings of the world in a moment of time. It's as if he compiled all the history of mankind. He said, this could all be yours. You could rule it. From the beginning of time to the end of time, you can have all of these. You will be King of kings and Lord of lords. Which, by the way, is exactly what Jesus wants, isn't it? He wants King of kings and Lord of lords. He wants to be King Jesus, who all mankind submits to. And devil says, I can give you this. He said to him, to you I will give all this authority and their glory, for it has been delivered to me, and I give it to whom I will. If you then will worship me, it will all be yours. And you know, Jesus doesn't argue with this. Jesus doesn't stand up and say, Satan, you don't have that kind of power. Satan, you can't give me what you're offering. That's not what he says. Jesus addresses not, you don't have the power to give me this. He addresses, you give it to me at a cost too high. You know, one of the things that we run into in life, one of the most tempting things that Satan offers us is power. Freedom to live like you want. Pursue your dreams. Whatever you want to do, just do. Satan offers you that. You want to live for yourself? Do it. Satan absolutely offers you that. You want something, you take it. You desire something, you want it, you go grab it. You want to do something, go do it. Don't worry. Don't be fettered by the what other people think or what other people do. You live for you. He offers you all of that power, but at too high of a cost. Satan is very good at what he does. He always makes sure to downgrade the price tag. To show you all the features of the car. All the stuff it'll do. All the shiny new paint job. We'll talk about the easy payments later. That's the problem, isn't it? When we talk about sin, we must be honest that it has an allure. If we're not honest about that, we are not arming ourselves for the cosmic battle that's going on. We're not arming our children. We're not arming our fellow saints for the battle that's ahead. If we just tell them, look, sin is awful and nasty and bad. It's horrible. That's all true. But what we mean by that is it's nasty and horrible and bad because of what it does to your soul. But we need to also be honest about the fact that it is alluring, it glitters and it shines, and it promises great, great things, but at too high of a cost. Satan's going to take you places, if you follow him, that you don't want to go. He will burn bridges you do not want to burn. When you go down that road that he wants you to go, what you end up finding is it takes you places you never thought you would go to. Honestly, I don't have time, nor do I know a way to say this with tiny ears around. But the amount of times that I have been involved with counseling somebody with addiction, and I see the beginning of it when it's first starting, and then I see when it goes unfettered where it takes them 5 years, 10 years, sometimes faster than that, sometimes 6 months later. You physically cannot even recognize the person they become. I will tell you, sin will take you places you do not want to go, places you didn't think you would ever go. You thought you were in control. You weren't. You weren't. The third thing is, it's much easier to welcome the devil than to get him to leave. This is another thing that demon possession tells us, is that it has always been much easier to let him in than to kick him out. In Luke chapter 8, it says that these demons, they seized him many times. Again, we don't know all the details about demon possession. There's a lot left vague, and so I don't want to give you the sense that I know everything that's going on. But one of the aspects that seems to be something that happens pretty regularly in demon possession is it seems as if there is an attempt by the person to gain control back, and then he's seized again by the demons. And so the demons then hurt the person, seize him over and over and over again. Acts 10, verse 38, there is a person who is demon-possessed, and the Scripture describes the demon possession as oppressed by the devil. And oppression, I understand. Demon possession's harder for us to kind of grasp because it's not a modern thing you see every day. But oppression, that's language we can talk. We know what it's like when people are oppressed, when somebody with power uses that power to squash and hurt and inhibit the life of another person without regard for their well-being. And anytime that person tries to show any semblance of power, the one with oppression power squashes them back down. Abuse of power. That's the kind of language that demon possession talks about. In Luke chapter 11, turn your Bible over there. Luke chapter 11. There is this account that Jesus gives of what's happening with demon possession. And again, I don't know all the ins and outs of demon possession. That is not something I've had experience with. All I have is just what the text says. But Jesus knows all about it. So listen to him describe it. In verse 24, when the unclean spirit goes out of a man and passes through waterless places seeking rest, and not finding any, it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds it swept and put in order, and it goes and takes along 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they go in and live there, and the last state of that man becomes worse than the first. Do you realize that what Jesus is saying in Luke chapter 11, verse 24, the man called Legion experienced? And I would have you notice that when that demon goes through waterless places and then doesn't find a place to rest, he thinks about going back to the person he had been in before, and he says, I will return to whose house? Not his house, my house. They are possessive. They are perfectly happy to scratch your name off the title and put their name there. Your soul's not your soul to them. It's their product, their ownership. They want it. One of the things that you see throughout the text of the Bible is that to Satan and his minions, you are just an object. I am convinced the only reason Satan cares at all about your soul is because God loves your soul. God desires your soul. God wants you, and He cares for you, and He wants to spend eternity with you. And you know who hurts when a soul goes to hell? God does. And guess what? Satan likes that. You are just a means to an end for him. He doesn't love you. He doesn't care about you. You're not important to him. You are just an object by which he can hurt God. And again, I don't understand all the details about demon possession, but just like words like oppression, I do understand what that means. We can kind of wrap our heads around that. Objectification, we can too. We talk all the time about the idea of objectifying people as being wrong. People are souls. They matter. You should love your neighbor as yourself. You don't objectify people. That is exactly what Satan does. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 through 27, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. One way in which we open ourselves up to the devil is when we are angry enough and hold on to it. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down in your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. Say it the other way. Be angry and sin, and let the sun go down on your anger, and you give him opportunity. If you hang on to anger and bitterness and frustration, and you just churn over these things, instead of having what God tells us to do, which says, look, each day has enough trouble of its own, forgive other people, and have the peace that surpasses all understanding. All will work out. Seek first the kingdom, all these things will be added to you. Stop doing that. Instead, be angry and hang on to it, and you give the opportunity to the devil. You let him in, and once you let him in, it's a lot easier to let him in than it is to kick him out. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Don't make the mistake of dabbling with the devil. Don't make the mistake of toying with sin. I'm convinced that God loves so much more than we love. I have no problem wrapping my mind around the idea that God, His idea of love, His level of love is far greater than mine. He loves far more than I love. I have no problem with that. But I forget that God also hates more than I hate. Because when I see God's reaction to sin and how much He despises it, how much it bothers Him, you have to remember, look, it says, for God it is impossible to lie. God hates lies so much, it's an impossibility. The one who is omni-everything says it is impossible for me to lie because He hates sin that much. Do not play with Satan and toy with sin, because once you let him in the door, it is a lot easier to let him in than it is to kick him out. And you will see this in every area of your life. In every area of your life, when you give Satan a foothold, that turns into him pulling up a chair and then him taking over and saying, you know what, this is my house now, if left unchecked. The fourth thing is, demon possession reminds us that the abyss is the home of Satan and his demons. Don't make it yours too. It's said in multiple places. Luke 8, command them to go away into the abyss, is what Jesus says. Matthew chapter 8, in that account of the legion of demons, they say, have you come to torment us before the time? Emphasizing the idea that there is a time where they will be in torment. Revelation 20 talks about the lake of fire and sulfur that they will be cast into. And Matthew 25 refers to it as the eternal fire prepared for, not for humans, it's not prepared for humans. Hell was never meant for us. You understand that? Hell was not meant for you. God didn't make hell for you. It is prepared for the devil and his angels. The pigs are a cautionary tale. Because this demon-possessed man, Jesus cast them out, and he cast them into the pigs. And I used to think it was kind of a weird thing that they have this conversation with Jesus. Demons ask Jesus for a favor, and Jesus grants the favor. Doesn't that seem odd to you? Here's these demons. They're the bad guys. Why are we negotiating with terrorists? Right? They ask Jesus, so here, let us go into the pigs. And Jesus says, okay, I think now the reason that Jesus did that is so you and I could read about exactly what happened. When the demons go into the pigs, what do the pigs do? Now, if you read like some old King James version, it'll talk about them going off of a cliff, and that gives you this picture of them running like lemmings, and then off the cliff, and then they die. That is not, the topography of the land doesn't match that. The topography of the land matches instead what most translations today will say, which is a steep bank. They ran down the bank into the lake. If a pig runs down a hill into a lake, does the pig normally die? No. You know what a pig can do? Swim. You can watch YouTube videos on pigs swimming. It's adorable. They can swim just fine. But that's not what happens here. They run down the bank into the lake and they drown themselves. They drown themselves. This is an involuntary suicide pact with the demons. I don't know how you even describe it. It is a horrifying thing. And that's part of why the villagers are frightened. They just saw this crazy thing that never happens. But it is a cautionary tale to us. What happens when you let the devil in and you let him take control? Guess what? Eventually, you will find yourself destroying yourself. And we see it all the time. Sin makes the world self-destruct. We look at the things that people do to their lives, the things that people are doing in the pursuit of happiness, and it's nuts. It is a self-destructive behavior. You say, well, where does that self-destructive behavior come from? It's the devil. His home is the abyss, the lake of fire. The eternal fire is prepared for him and his angels. Don't join him. That place is real. Do not join him. And the fifth thing is that Jesus is the healer of the body and the mind and the soul. At the end of the story in Luke chapter 8, verse 35, they came to Jesus and they found the man from whom the demons had gone sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. I want you to see that all three things are there. His body, his mind, and his soul. His body is clothed. Right? No longer degraded, no longer ashamed, no longer out of control. He's sitting there with clothing on. He's in his right mind. He can think for himself, not controlled by all of these horrible things. And where is he sitting? He's sitting very specifically in one spot. They found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus. That's his soul. This man found the one who can heal the soul. I want you to understand that maybe some of the things that I've talked about that the devil can do, maybe some of those things ring true for you. Maybe you are and have been caught up in sin, addictive behavior, any number of different things that you know are wrong, but you feel out of control. And you have kept it in the darkness, and you have hidden it from God and from man, and even at times you thought you've done it well. Let me tell you right now, one, you're not doing it as well as you think you are. Those who love you know. And two, it will only get worse. There is no cure that just kind of accidentally shows up. It's always intentional. The path is Jesus, is the way out. In Luke chapter 11, when Jesus is accused of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebul, Jesus tells this parable of a man who goes to plunder somebody's house, rob him. And he says, you can't rob the guy unless somebody is stronger can bind him. And that is what Jesus is. He is the one who can bind the strong man because he is the strongest man. He is the one with the power and the key to Hades. He is the one with the power of life and death and redemption and healing and recovery. There are two things that it really takes for Jesus to heal you. 1 John 4:4, little children, you are from God and have overcome. That's what we're talking about, overcome. We want to overcome. Have overcome them, for he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. That's the first thing. You cannot overcome without Jesus. It's just that simple. There's no overcoming without Jesus. And then there's a second thing, and John talks about this as well in the very next chapter. For everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. Jesus is the overcomer. He is the solution to all sin, all problems, all pain. He is the overcomer. But he will only overcome if you put your faith in him. That's your piece of this. And so that is my call to you today. Maybe you are a Christian already. You were baptized into Christ with all the best intentions, with the desire to follow him. You were washed clean of your sin, and then somewhere along the way, maybe you did it like Hebrews talks about it, where you drifted. And kind of outwardly, you're putting on the show still, but inwardly, you've drifted away from him. Or maybe there is some deep, dark sin that you had in your life before you were a Christian, and you've kept it in your life, or maybe you picked it up along the way, and it has overcome you. It has a controlling influence. There is only one way out, and his name is Jesus, and you've got to put your faith in him. And we are here to help you with that. Because we are all one family, we are one body, and we are meant to do this together. One of the ways that you put your faith in Jesus is trusting the rest of his body to help you. If we can help you with that, let us know. And if you are not a Christian yet, Jesus is the overcomer. If you wish to be an overcomer as well, be baptized into him. Have your sins washed away. We offer this invitation as we stand and sing the invitation song.